Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Stedman podcast. I hope you are having a wonderful weekend. And today's topic is going to be maybe controversial, maybe not. We're going to kind of talk a little bit about the church's reaction, response, or even lack of response to the assassination attempt on former President Donald J. Trump at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. So joining me on that discussion is Micah Current. Micah, how are you doing today?
I'm good. It was a wild weekend for sure.
Oh yeah.
Are you considered a millennial or are you Gen X?
I
Or are you kind of in the middle?
so I'm born in 1982, so technically I'm considered a millennial or an elder millennial, but there's a lot of people who say, well, maybe I'm a zennital because am kind of in that weird where I don't necessarily identify. There's a lot of things I do identify with millennials, but there's a lot of things that I do identify with Gen X too. So I'm kind of in that weird. I'm basically stuck in a transitional phase.
Well, I I saw a lot of things after the attempted assassination of President Trump on Saturday on TikTok and other platforms from millennials saying, "Listen, we've lived through Y2K, we've lived through a recession, we've lived through COVID, we've lived through an assassination attempt on the president. Um, I'm tired. Like all the things that we've lived through in our short amount of life, uh, or time of on this earth as humans. Um, we've been through a lot. Y2K was another one, I think, unless I mentioned that.
Yeah, you
But
did.
like just all these crazy things that have happened in our lifetime, and
Mm-hmm.
you know Donald Trump is a very controversial figure. He's a former president. He is a celebrity. He is a famous businessman. And if you would have asked me if somebody was going to shoot at him was on my 2024 bingo card, you'd have been wrong. Um, Especially with the technology and Secret Service and the ability to protect people these days. Um, it's just mind blowing. It's gut wrenching. Like I've thought about it, and it's hard to turn. 9/11 was another one on that list.
Mm-hmm.
The the things that we've lived through as millennials. But
Yeah.
if you uh, if you think about it, they said that I think it was Ronald Reagan that was the last president that was shot, and that was in the 80s. Um, and
Yeah.
so they said something about President Bush, George W.
So
Bush, and
George,
I couldn't remember that because I mean, like, and that was when I was a
I don't
teenager. But
necessarily know. I don't necessarily know George W. And I have to double check, but I don't remember him getting shot at. I do remember him getting a shoe thrown at him when he was in the Middle East, when he was talking to some reporters. Someone was like throwing stuff at him.
yeah,
Like that's like the one thing. I don't know if you would call that an assassination attempt with someone throwing like a loafer at you, but
yeah. Well, so anyway, like it's just man, like I am just I'm troubled um, by what's going on, and I can't pretend to be a martyr and you know fix our country. I think that it's going to take a divine intervention to fix our country, the divisiveness, and um, I mean, nobody's going to be happy if Trump's president. Nobody's going to be happy if Biden's president again, and it's a very muddy situation. And um, as I heard a lot of pastors sharing yesterday on online as I watched a couple of streams, um, what an opportunity for the church to step up and really be the bridge to some unity conversations. And uh, yeah, I'm still kind of just reeling from it, and it's hard to not turn the news on and see what they figured out, or to see what's going on, and see what the latest scoop is on this 20. I think he was 22 years old, and he apparently from what I saw a little bit this morning on the news, was bullied in high school and um, was actually a registered Republican, which is crazy because you're shooting at the former president who was the top leading Republican on the Republican side of
Hmm.
things.
Hmm.
Um, where were you when you found out?
So I was actually, so interestingly enough, I didn't find out about it till late last night, Saturday, because I had a memorial service I was at. Laura's nephew passed away back in February, died from like health complications, 17 years old. So
Hmm.
we went to, and I mean, the first thing I saw was I pulled up and there's like somebody, I was like just checking Facebook just randomly, and somebody put a picture of this shot with Donald Trump with his fist up in the air with a little bit of blood on his face, and like the Secret Service kind of like huddled around it. And I'm thinking, and but then there was like this big long like biblical like pay attention
Hmm.
to what's happening, the Lord's doing something, and I'm thinking, what the heck is this? Like, I was so confused by the post. I'm thinking, is this actually a real picture of something, or was this AI and
Like
someone's trying to say,
photoshopped or something? Yeah.
or someone trying to elevate, like that random like song that keeps playing, like, oh, I'm standing with the chosen one. Donald Trump's the chosen one. I'm thinking, wait, is this one of these type of posts again? Like, what the heck is going on? It wasn't until later I happened to see footage. I think it's like when I got on TikTok, someone showed, like, I think like a couple of like news sources were showing footage of it, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like.
Mm.
And then the third thing that kind of confirmed that it happened was, um, I happened to see on the church I work at on their Facebook page, and I'm not sure if like my pastor posted it on there because she posted the same thing on her personal page, or I don't know if it's like one of the things where her page and the church's page is linked. So she posts something on her page, it automatically goes to the church page. Like, I'm not sure, but on the church page, Facebook page, it says, it's a quote from a governor. It says, violence targeted at any political party or political leader is absolutely unacceptable. It has no place in Pennsylvania or the United States. Grateful that former President Trump is not seriously hurt. Lord have mercy. And that was the post.
Hmm.
And that was it. So that was the only thing that, um, as far as on social media, that the church I work at had posted anything about the assassination. And that was that was on July 13th at like almost 8 o'clock p.m. that got posted.
Yeah. So like I was sitting in our master bedroom in the recliner with our daughter. She was taking a nap. She's in between naps or whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
was scrolling through social media on my phone, and it said um, something was going on at the rally that Trump was doing in Pennsylvania. So I turned the news on, and the first time I saw the video footage, I thought it sounded almost like firecrackers or
Oh
something,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody threw some firecrackers in the air and they were being rowdy in the crowd, and Trump just dove down. But then when he got up and there was blood just dripping down his face, I was like, "Is this real? Like, is this a real? Is this life?" Um, and it, from all accounts, he's okay. And it's crazy, but he woke up yesterday morning. So he was shot on Saturday. It grazed his ear, and they said by like the grace of God and centimeters, we're talking like centimeters, it would have hit him in the head and he would have died. Um, he woke up on Sunday and he went and played golf. And then he got on a plane yesterday and he flew to Milwaukee because this week is the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And so the man is superhuman, whether you like him or not. Like it's like if somebody had shot at me, I've been hiding in a bunker somewhere, like underground. But but like you said, Scott, like it's been 40 years since somebody shot at a president. Um, and there have been threats obviously over the years. I know that President Obama got a lot of threats, and so did George W. Bush, and I'm sure Bill Clinton, I'm sure every president really knows that going into the job. But it's just really disturbing. So, um, what, you know, thoughts, I mean, additionally, do you have, or, are you thinking
Oh,
through as, I know that,
so
you and I joke a lot about, just politics in general, and you take all these surveys and you're like, I'm right in the middle. Like I'm stuck in the middle based on our two candidates. I'm very in the middle on things. And
yeah.
I've expressed that I'm very, very much conservative, about 80% conservative, but I'm willing to have
Hmm.
conversations with folks about different topics and issues. Um, but
Yeah.
nobody should be getting shot at.
No. And here,
I don't care if you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, etc.
yeah, and I think it's always hard when you look at this type of stuff because there's so much, there's the news that says here's what happened and they're reporting what happened and they're trying to get, everything from how the president's okay, how other people in Pennsylvania, um other politicians are responding to this. Like for an example, like I was seeing a bunch of like all these politicians who have responded to the incident, and especially I saw like Republicans respond to it, but then it's like here's all the Democrats that respond to it, and you see people like President Joe Biden saying, hey, this is not acceptable, this is not okay. Like I think there's even a press conference where he said something about how he's going to make sure he sends extra people to the from the White House to the Republican National Convention just to make sure security is top notch, so we're not having another situation. People like Nancy Pelosi was like, oh, I'm glad he's okay. There's stuff like that where you go, okay, even though you may have a fundamental disagreement with someone, or you may not necessarily like a person, you're kind of at the point where I don't want this person also getting killed and shot at too. But then I'll see stuff like just random posts like, oh, how come the Dems are silent about the assassination attempt? I'm like, I don't know what you've been looking at, but apparently it's out there. Like people are commenting on it. It's like, so it's stuff like, so that's always the hard part, especially within our age today, is you have information of, we're just going to report the facts, and then you have information where facts mixed in with opinion. And then you have stuff where it's just people's opinion and it's kind of giving you the illusion that it's fact. And when you start, and since there's no way to really discern all that information that's pouring to you, and based on any type of, I don't know, any type of filters, or even in sometimes just people's heads and just being able to think critically about the stuff, it gets very muddy and very polluted in our thing, which I think may kind of be why, my theory is that may be kind of why the assassin did what they did, because they were just tired of dealing with all the stress and dealing with all the stuff. And even though, like you said, he was a registered Republican, it doesn't make sense that a registered Republican would try to assassinate the Republican candidate to run for president. Like that does not make sense. And yet, if you're hearing all this like talk of this person's evil, that person's evil, and Trump has kind of a ego in some ways where he's very much talks a really big game and like how, oh, I'm the best and no one can ever touch me, and if anyone's going to do this, I'm going to do this, very kind of that old school machoism,
Tongue
tough
in cheek.
tough politics that, he's in that age where he's at the generation and the age where that was very acceptable. And that could just add more fuel to the fire that kind of led up to this. And I don't necessarily think it's just Trump himself that led up to this thing of what he's doing. I think it has to do with all our media outlets. It has to do with everybody thinking everything is a conspiracy every time. Like, you put something on Facebook and it gets blocked, or it gets like a filter on it saying, hey, this stuff may be not appropriate or whatever. And sometimes it's just a Bible verse and you're like, why the heck is this blocked? But then, there's other stuff that's blocked and people go, oh, people are trying to do this. And it just creates a culture of panic. It creates a culture of anxiety. And if people are feeling that, and you have people like me who's sitting here going, I'm in the middle and I really do not like any of my choices. And even when I look at the third party candidates, they're not really my cup of tea either. So I'm kind of in a point where it's like, I'm going to vote. I'm going to exercise my vote. But at the same time, I don't know who I'm going to vote for. And I probably won't know who I vote for until at the very end. And I mean, I can't watch the debates because the debates are just everyone trashing each other and they don't even talk about the issues. It's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this better because this guy really screwed it up. Like, I want to hear what you are going to do. I don't want to hear about how you think the other person has failed, or how much they're an idiot. Like, I don't want to hear that. Yeah. So I think that's kind of the hard part for me is we're already in a very timonious culture where our politics is just messy and awful. And because of that, it just becomes very messy. And I think, and really the people who are suffering are the American people. Everybody's suffering through this because they're just really, I mean, it's kind of hard where it's like, well, they're now thinking this is just sad and pathetic. Where I remember, like, after Obama served a second term and they had both the Democrat and the Republican debates and stuff to figure out who's going to be the next president. And, everyone called it the circus because it's like, wow, look at all these people, look at all these clowns that are running for office. And I think back then everyone thought, oh, this is kind of funny, huh? And now we kind of get to the point where it's like, this isn't funny anymore. And it's not funny. And this is very serious. And we have a really big issue on our hands that I don't think whoever the president is after this election is going to be able to fix this. It's just going to be continuing to be a mess.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, like you were just talking a little bit ago about, folks exercising their freedom of speech and the ability to say the things that they want to say and having numerous platforms to do so, such as Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, etc. My wife was showing me some stuff yesterday morning on our way to church about some of these, what's after millennial, Gen Z, some of these Gen Zers, like, saying, like, quote, the shooter had one job and they missed. Like, that's not okay. And it's like, yes, we have freedom of speech in this country, but you shouldn't want to wish death on anybody.
Well, the interesting thing about Gen Z is they have a dark sense of humor. Like, even like some of my students who are in my youth, they'll make 9/11 jokes. And I'm thinking, and I
You
have
should
to remember,
go.
and
You
the
should go
thing
on
is,
Disney Plus and watch the National Geographic documentary on 9/11 when people were jumping out of the World Trade Center for their lives, knowing they were going to die because they didn't want to burn alive. That's
well, and the thing is some of these people, when you look at when they were born way after, they were born like 5,
yes,
6 years after it, and they have no clue. They have no clue that probably the political climate we're in all kind of stemmed from that. And
yes.
that people don't trust anybody. People are always in a state of conspiracy and panic and anxiety all the time. And that, so I think in some ways, Gen Z is just kind of like making these, they make these jokes because, or they say these things because it's like, well, and not only because, hey, let's try to lighten up the mood with some dark humor, which is not funny, but at the same time, Gen Z has the mindset, if I could say something controversial, or if I could say something funny, or if I could say something that's going to blow up and become viral, then that's going to raise my platform, because Gen Z's all much about the digital spaces.
Yeah.
And that's
still not okay. I mean,
no, it's still not. I'm not saying that's okay, but everyone's always trying to get their 15 minutes, whether it's good publicity or bad publicity.
yeah, it's just I was watching something the other day, and they were just talking about, they used a good word for it, but the temperature of our country is just very, very high right now with everything going on, and yeah. So, did your church do anything yesterday in response, or did they say anything during the services, or?
You know what? I don't know, because I was teaching Sunday school. So at least the first half of, because I'm there for the first half of service, I'm not there for the second half. And right now, I don't think, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know Pastor Colleen, she's very good at talking about stuff that's happening within our country, political or non-political stuff. And she's very good at trying to, A, communicate the issue, and B, talk about, what should the Christian response be. So for me, even though I didn't hear anything, and I could always go back and watch the service and do it, but my best bet is she probably did. But at the same time, since she did, usually she doesn't put anything on Facebook. She really doesn't handle much on Facebook. But since she did put that quote, it kind of mentioned that thing about violence on our Facebook page. I'm pretty sure she probably did say anything in service. And usually Laura will tell me, like, oh yeah, Pastor Colleen said something kind of political during service. Like, she didn't say anything to me about it, so I'm sure none of that happened, because I would probably find out about it. And at the same time, not that like I would do anything about it, but that's
No,
just
I didn't mean it like that. I meant like more in respect to like just addressing, hey, we need to be the church. We need to step up. We need to.
And I think
like,
if she did, she probably did. But
condemning those issues, etc.
Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we also had a situation where there was a school teacher, a speech pathologist, who got shot and killed in Columbus, and she kind of knew a lot of people. And like our worship leader, his kids were best friend with her son, and she was a single mom. So they're kind of mourning that. So I think if anything, we probably addressed that, but we probably more focused on, the death that was outside our front door, so to say.
I just saw a lot of churches respond similarly to what President Biden did, and other news and media platforms on Saturday. They were basically just saying there's no place for political violence, or any violence for that matter, right? Like it's not okay.
Yeah.
And they weren't making it about one political. The ones that I watched, they weren't making it about one candidate or the other, one party or the other. They were literally just making it about the fact that we cannot have this kind of violence in our country. So it's, I know this is kind of a somber episode, but it's very it's disturbing, to be honest.
Well,
it's frustrating, it's disturbing, it's heartbreaking. I'm glad President Trump's okay.
Yeah. I think,
I would have said the same thing if something would have happened to President Biden.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think the thing is, and I hate to say it, but I think because of this attempt, hopefully pastors have a better I'm trying to figure out how to say it, because here's the thing. I don't think, I believe the role of a pastor is always trying to help people, point them out to what the kingdom of God is. How do we become Christians? How do we live as citizens of the kingdom of God? What's our ethic? What are the ethics of the kingdom of God? And, it's the same thing that Jesus was teaching throughout the Gospels about the kingdom of God. And for me, there's a thing where now, and I'm grateful that, a lot of churches you saw were very posting it, and is very much reflective of what President Biden said. Like, this is not okay. Violence of any kind is not okay. This is unacceptable. And, I didn't really see a lot of churches put anything like, hey, the assassination attempt on Trump really just means that he is the one that God is calling, because, like, people can like spin things a lot. Like, I didn't see any of that. Most people were just very much like, this is wrong. This is not okay, regardless of where you are politically. Any attempt on anyone's life, regardless if they're a Republican or a Democrat or a third party or whatever, is not okay. It's not okay at all. So for me, I go, okay, that's great. I'm glad we have that. And I think as the pastor's job, I'm glad now that, people are hopefully will get the message. So you don't have to deal with the people within your church still posting random meme-ish stuff that's very in poor taste. Like you said, like someone posted a thing about, the assassin had one job and he missed. Like, that's very poor taste. That's unacceptable. I think it's very unacceptable where, back in 2001 at the January 6th, where, I had a lot of church people saying that was acceptable. And I'm like, it was violence and people were going after politicians. That was unacceptable too. Like, so I think in the whole grand scheme of things, from 2001 to now, what we witnessed a couple of days ago in 2004 and 24, like, hopefully people kind of get to the point like, okay, we've had enough of this. It's time that we have to step up. And I'm glad that we have politicians who have stepped up and said, this is not okay, on both sides of the aisle. I haven't seen any politician ever saying anything of ill will, even like your controversial ones. Like, haven't said anything of ill will about anybody over this incident. I'm glad that a lot of churches have said this is not okay. And I think, the responsibility of the church is to simply say, hey, this is not okay. And frankly, if there's ministers who are bold enough saying, we have lived in a tumultuous state for a long time, it's time for us to be able to show the world what it's like to be kingdom people, what it's like to live as the kingdom. Here's how we need to live out the love ethic, and not the love ethic for our side, but the love ethic for everybody. And you can preach the thing about the Good Samaritan. Who is my neighbor? Well, if you are like the most conservative Republican in the world, well, your neighbor is the most progressive Democrat. That's your neighbor.
Right.
And you got to love that person the way Jesus loves you. And you have to be able to teach people, and people need to be able to understand, because, and I think it's something that has to be continually said, and I hate to say that because, we have people in our churches that are grown people, adults, grandparents, parents, but sometimes me communicating and saying that on a Sunday morning, we need to live the way Jesus taught us to live through this love ethic, and we need to love everybody. I could say that for 1 hour on a Sunday, and the rest of the day, They can go on TikTok, they can go on Facebook, they can go on Instagram, they can go on any news source they want to and get all this other noise in their head. And now I'm seeing posts from the same person who said, yes, I'm going to love like Jesus, now posting memes that's making fun of, the assassination attempt, or making fun of how our president has narcolepsy, or whatever the case may be. Like, it's to the point where it's like, if you're in the kingdom, we probably shouldn't be posting that stuff out there. Because if people know that I'm a Christian and I'm putting like inappropriate stuff about the assassination, people are now going to get a bad taste of what Christianity is. They're going to get a bad view of who Christians are. And we have to be, we eventually, we have to come to a time where if we say we're Christian, we need to show it. And even if our political view or what we think may be, or even if I do see a funny meme, a political meme that I think is funny about our current president or our former president, I have to ask myself, is this the loving thing? Is this going to be loving to those people who I'm posting this about? And B, is this going to exemplify who Jesus and God is? And if it's not, then I shouldn't post it. Even if I think it's funny or not, okay, I have to keep that to myself. I shouldn't be putting that out there on the interwebs, because I'm probably going to get into an argument. I'm going to get into a fight, and then I'm going to get defensive. And then I'm not going to be putting my best foot forward and showing the love of Christ if I'm getting into arguments over a meme, a politically charged meme I posted on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better, my friend.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know this we haven't even gone on. We just started talking about that. We didn't even do our stories gone wild, which is okay, because
I think do that. We could do that. I mean, this is,
well, so, oh yeah. Oh, this is just a wild story. And, and actually it was interesting because I have a friend who's a photographer, professional photographer. And it was interesting because she even posted, you guys know I fall politically, and, she's very much votes Democrat, very much is very open to expressing her Democratic views and everything else. But as a photographer, she was talking about those pictures, the Donald Trump fist bump, and then even the one where it's like you can see like his face and you can kind of see the blood on his face, but then you can kind of see like there's like the Secret Service around him and you only get like a glimmer. And she was commenting, the person who took the photo, because again, she's traveled all over the world for photography, so she knows these people. She's calling him by name. This person who took this photo, this is a great photo. This photo is going to live for eternity. This is an iconic photo. This photo right here shows so much humanity and compassion, and it's just such a beautiful photo, and you should be proud of this. And she was just basically saying, from a professional point of view as a photographer, these are some great photos. It doesn't matter where I am politically, where I am politically, but I have to admit, these were some great photos, and these are some great shots of everything that went down today. I don't think that the assassination attempt was great. I don't think it's not warranted. I don't think this is not okay. But I also have to say, man, these pictures are beautiful, and they really capture the moment of what was happening down there, from the scaredness to the triumph of everything that went down in Butler, PA. So, I think in some ways, even as a professional Christian, you can still talk about it and still be very cordial about the whole situation. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, hopefully, looking optimistic, hopefully this becomes the turning point where we can start having more cordialness within our political space. Actually, I think I saw a video. Someone posted a video of the 2016 debate between, was it 2016? Maybe it's 2012. It was between Obama and Mitt Romney. And I think this was 2012. It was 2012. And, they had their debate. But at the end, President Obama's like, hey, first I'd like to thank Governor Romney here to debate with me. thank you so much for being out here. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you. You're a great person. And then even Mitt Romney said, hey, I also want to thank President Obama. Thank you so much for being out here on your anniversary. I know you could think of any ways you could have spent. I'm glad that all the ways you could have spent your anniversary, you wanted to spend it with me tonight. And everyone's just laughing and having a good time. And I think that is something that we definitely have been missing. I mean, since then, we have not had a debate where people at the end are acting cordial. Maybe they do like a little handshake and a pat, quick handshake and a pat, but you're not sitting there and hearing, even if you don't like the person, even if you don't like their politics, even if you fiercely debated them, at the end of the day, you're going to say, this person's a great person. And I wish you well.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I'm just rocked. I'm kind of rocked from it all.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I know this is a short episode, everybody, but, I want to know where you're at. Like, how are you responding to this? If you're a pastor, how are you responding to your church people? How are you communicating your views? Are you in alignment with us? Like, are you saying, hey, this is not okay, and you're educating your people that this is not okay? If you're somebody who's just a church member, has your church communicated anything about it? Has they not communicated at all? Or have they communicated and it wasn't, hey, this is okay? They kind of communicated something less that's kind of made you a little ill to the stomach. We want to know your stories. So if you are able to share that with us, you can send us an email at our website, thescottstedman.com, or you can comment on our YouTube and Facebook page. We look at those, we read those, we respond to those, and we even sometimes read those on the air. So friends, thank you so much for listening. I hope you are having a good weekend, and we'll be back on with another episode. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Scott Stedman Podcast. The Scott Stedman Podcast is made possible by support from our listeners. We thank listeners like Patty and Scott, whose support goes to this podcast's continual growth and maintenance. If you want to support this podcast, you can do so in a number of ways. First, feel free to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed this episode and share it with your friends. If you'd like to financially support the Scott Stedman Podcast, you can go to the website ko-fi.com/the Scott Stedman Podcast. That website again is ko-fi.com/the Scott Stedman Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.